I don't know where they are.
Rose? Rose! Rose, give me those keys! Rose, give me those keys. Rose, now! Now, the keys!
And a good afternoon to everybody, and welcome to another edition of Real Talks. My name is David Steele, where every movie I talk about is going to start a conversation in some way, shape, or form. So come join me on the cinematic journey as we discuss one of the greatest movies of the last 10 years, and frankly, easily a society-changing type of film. So, once again, hello, and this is the perfect movie for February. And this is going to kick everything off for Black History Month for the channel and everything else. And Get Out. Get Out was one of those pictures that just, I had seen it. I had not seen it actually when it first came out. So a little bit of backstory about it. It came out in 2017 and, it really was a eye-opening film in a lot of different ways. That all being said, we have this brand new filmmaker, okay, named Jordan Peele. Now, anybody who had seen Key and Peele, and he had done several things for Comedy Central and everything else, so he was familiar to a lot of people. And so, it was all comedy. We had never seen the darker side of him, so to speak. And when this film came out in 2017, it was really, as I said, it was eye-opening on so many different levels. And it was one of those things where this was the type of film that you had to see in the theaters because you're just going to jump. So, as I said, this was written and directed by Jordan Peele. 2017, he wins an Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay for this. And it was well-deserved. It was really, really well-deserved. And he just did an incredible job considering the competition he was going up against. Now, truth be told, he's only made 3 films. So he doesn't have that large of a sample size. But what he's done with those 3 films, and I saw Nope last year, and you guys can go check that out on the channel. I did a whole spoiler cast of Nope, and I'll put the link up there for you guys. And then, of course, he did Us prior to that. So he's been at the top of his game for a long time. He's actually producing a brand new film coming out at the end of this year, which I'm ecstatic to see, and I can't wait. So, yeah, as I said at the top, this is the perfect movie of not only February, but throughout the whole film, or throughout the whole month, guys, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be talking about some of the greatest African-American filmmakers, and not only filmmakers, but actors, directors, and everything else of the past, 50, 60 years. I have a whole number of films lined up for you guys. But this is the perfect film for February. What I'm going to do is I took notes, as I always do, and I want to talk about, what I really enjoyed about this and how it really worked with the film. So as we start out, okay, to begin the film, usually silhouettes are very difficult to pull off, and this one did it perfectly. We see somebody walking down the street, the silhouette with and the juxtaposition with the white car underneath the street light was just fantastic. It was one of those things where it was no man-made it wasn't difficult. You had the African-American, but it was very dark out, okay? And you had the person walking, and then you had the street light, and you had the white car, and it was just fantastic. And so, it goes through a little sequence. As we open it up, so our two main people, there are several people in this film, obviously, but the two main people we started with, okay, and the two main characters of our story, okay, are Chris and Alice. So Chris is played by Daniel Kaluuya, who, of course, Jordan Peele has put in 2 out of the 3 films. I think he might not have been in Us, but regardless. And then, of course, he was in Black Panther, though, okay? And then he was in, of course, Get Out, and then he was in Nope. And then you have Allison Williams, and Allison Williams is a fantastic actress. She pulled this off tremendously, and I don't think there are many other actresses that could have done it. Um, the simple premise is, so when we first meet them, everything is fun and it's uplifting and everything else, and they're going to go visit the parents, and we'll get into the parents and everything else that transpires. And it's one of those things where right off the bat you can start to see things. So when they're going, and so Chris's big fixation is smoking, and so we never see him smoke except one time where he tries to go out and have a cigarette at night and he gets spooked. But other than that, and so that being said, when we get to the house, okay, so they go up, there's an accident, okay, Rose is driving, and so the cop is you can tell there are tendencies there that he's being racist, in which case, she tries to protect him, okay, and at which point, so they get to the house, and they meet the parents, so to speak. So the parents are very interesting, okay. So you have the father, who's played by um, Bradley Whitfield. So of course Bradley Whitfield was on The West Wing for many years, and he was actually very good in that, and he was very good in this too for the role that he had. And so she's trying to warn him about certain things, and it's just the first interaction we see is very interesting. Although the first shot of the house when they pull up, it is interesting though because it's a wide shot. You'd think it would want to be like a little bit like a medium shot or a closer shot, but that's just foreshadowing things. That's um, really going to happen throughout the rest of the film. And just there's a lot of emptiness in this film. Okay, a lot of silence, but the way the music is used is fantastic. And so, like the scene where there's the accident, and then all you hear is the sound of the animal, and it's what we think is the animal, and it's just making these awful, awful sounds. But that's it. That's all you hear. And then the absence of music there, okay, or very little music, really works. So we get to the house, and then we meet Jeremy. So Jeremy is Rose's brother, and he is actually played by Stephen Root, I believe. Or no, that's not him. Excuse me. Well, anyways, we get to the house, okay, and so Jeremy is the brother, and so you start to see a little bit of um. Okay, Caleb Landry Jones is his name, but we start to see you could see he's a little bit of a screw up. And so what ends up happening is it's very uncomfortable. And so, 25 minutes in, they start talking about, um, MMA and how he could be an athlete if he wanted. And there's another little signal that we're going down to get to be a dark path, right? The first one was the cop. Now this is another little angle here that we're just adding layers and basically dropping breadcrumbs to a bigger, scarier type of thing. What happens? And the whole first act is all set up. It's all set up. Okay. Um, so once that happens, okay, and then so Chris goes out because he once again the mother said, the father, they were all having lunch, and they said, well, you know, my wife's very good at curing people, and she was hypnotizing people, and so Chris started to notice there were a little unusual tendencies around. Okay. For example, the way everybody was speaking to him, the groundskeeper and the housekeeper and everything else. And what ends up happening is that, so he goes out to try and have a smoke one night. He gets spooked by Walter, who's the groundskeeper, because he's running. And the whole backstory about that is that his father, okay, was actually in the Berlin Olympics and lost to Jesse Owens. Okay. So it was moving on though. He comes in and she's sitting there in the dark and says, come on in, being very hospitable. And so they start talking and she's having tea and says, do you smoke in front of my daughter? And he's like, I'm really trying to quit. And he didn't want to be hypnotized. And so we see the scene going. And, eventually they start talking about his mother and how she died on the side of the road from a hit and run. And she eventually hypnotizes Chris. And what she calls the sunken place. And so this is where this is where people go. It's like being within yourself, but you can't do anything about it. And Deadpool, hey Dave, love this movie. I know, I do as well, and that's why we're doing it. I'm doing it for the perfect movies. Thank you for joining me, by the way. So we go to the sunken place, and she hypnotizes him, and we see, and there's that shot, that famous shot of him with the tears just rolling down his face, and we see him eventually, going down and falling, and I loved it because what you see is just this little box, and it's like Chris is within himself, but he can't do anything about it. And it's just magical to see how they were able to do that sort of thing. So the other thing too is Gordon. So Gordon is, so the big thing about this is that Gordon is, so there's a big get together that happens every year. Okay. And what ends up happening is this get together is from all the family of everywhere. And so this again is, and so Chris tells Rose, look, I think your mother hypnotized me. And there are certain things that are going on that are kind of sus, shady. And that being said, Rose dismisses him at first. And she's like, Chris, you're just being paranoid. And so at that point, once all the family comes and he's like, all right, fine. And then we see, the cell phone get disconnected. Okay. And so there's so many different things. And so we meet Gordon. And Gordon is this older white man, okay, that doesn't have any sight. And actually, so Gordon, I stand corrected. Gordon, when we first see everybody get together, he's an older guy that was a professional golfer, but he talks about Tiger. He's like, oh, I know Tiger Woods, but it's the way he's talking about Tiger Woods in a very unflattering manner, basically racist, and Chris is very uncomfortable about it. And it's an awkward exchange. And so when that happens, he's like, okay, let's move on. And so everybody, okay, from the weekend is completely oblivious to what is actually going on. And they're all the same way. So, we have Walter who's in love with this older white woman and everything. So there is comic relief in this. And the comic relief is Rod. So Rod, okay, is the comic relief, and he works for the TSA. And so that was played by Little Ray, okay, Little Ray Howery. And so what ends up happening is he works for the TSA and he's trying, he's friends with Chris and Rose and everything else. And so at that point, what ends up happening is he's like, look, dude, some suspect things are going on around this place. There have been a lot of people who go missing. Just be careful. And so he's starting to put on his side of this story, right? He's starting to slowly put things together. And so there's that one scene, okay, where, Daniel is he takes a picture of Walter and he flips out and he's like, get out. And so he gets snapped out of the hypnotism like that. And what ends up happening is, so they have to re-hypnotize him. And he's like, I'm sure I scared a lot of people, this, and this. I'm just going to go lay down. Of course, and all of these people have been going missing. And Rod, okay, is the other person that is trying to figure this all out. Meanwhile, Chris is in the thick of it. So while all that's being said, there is an older gentleman that Chris sits down because he's a photographer. He sits down and one of the older guys basically says, I've noticed your work and you're really good. But the oxymoron is that he's blind and that he is going to, he's a famous photographer or a famous guy in the photography industry, but he's blind. And so there's a gazebo and it's set up. And this is one of the creepiest things you'll ever see in your life. And I'm talking about the auction scene. Now, anybody who knows this, it's one of those things where there is no music played at all. And it doesn't need music. It is silent, but there is music, but it's very light, or if none at all. And then you see, as the camera starts to pull back, okay, we start to see Chris's picture. And we start to get an idea of exactly what's going on. And they're actually auctioning Chris off. So what they're going to do is they're going to hypnotize Chris, okay? And everybody has bingo, right? So it's like, huh? What's going on? So the way it's done is he holds up $5,000. And there's no music and there's no dialogue. But he holds up $5, indicate $5,000. Or it could be $500 or $50,000. We don't know. And so then he points to the person, okay, to say, okay, that's your bid. And then he'll go, 5 again. And then somebody goes to 10, 100,000. And everybody's like, we got bingo. And at that point, what ends up happening is done. So the person gets bought, okay? And of course, it's the blind guy that buys him. So that is really the end of the first act, right? We see the evil intentions going on here. And so that being said, now we know there's something really evil going down here. Daniel Kaluuya is so young, but he's got a great body of work. He never disappoints. I agree with you. Everything he's in, whether it's Nope or Get Out or Black Panther, he's very, very good in. So I totally agree with you. But now we know that there's just evil going on. And that's just one of the things that's going on at this place. Okay. And so we get to a point where now Chris is like, I want to leave. I want to leave. I'm done with this place. Because he legitimately saw Georgette, okay, who was the housekeeper, okay, unplug his phone. And so she goes in and apologizes. And so she is, it's, well, how do I say this? Emphatic. So we think that Chris breaks the hypnotism of Georgette at one point, and because of her saying no as many times as she did. And okay, once the auction happens, okay, then we go to um, the scene, the scene I was showing at the beginning of the video. Get the keys, Rose. Get the keys. Get the keys. And of course, this is when we find out. This is really the start of Act 2, right? And so Chris's dad or Rose's dad is standing there by the fire and says, "What is your purpose in life?" Right? Your purpose, and he starts being a little philosophical. And she is in on this whole thing. And so she takes the keys out and she's like, I can't let you have these, right? And so then Jeremy there takes a lacrosse hammer or lacrosse stick and hits him. And all she does, the mother, is just tap the cup and he falls back. Boom. And he's out. In the whole second act, we find out exactly what's going on. And it's just, so the lighting in which Chris is, it's so well balanced. Okay. So when it goes black and we see, he's falling back into the sunken place again. Right. And so at that point, it's, Jeremy's standing over Chris and saying, "Oh, Rose said you were her favorite." And the next time we see Chris, he wakes up and he's sitting in a chair, completely tied up. And the lighting is fantastic because we have the chair in the middle, we have hardwood floors, we have a backdrop in which is a brownish type of gray, and we have these 4 big lamps. That's all the lighting in the room. And then, of course, we have this 1980s television. And it's fantastic. And what it really does, too, is it shows the mood. Okay? It's a it's a very dismal time for our main character. Okay? And so, Rod, like I said, is the comic relief. So there's another scene, too. And this was actually an accident done by, well, maybe, not an accident per se, but they were trying to figure it out. And we have the whole, this is where Allison Williams makes her money, right? This is where Allison Williams makes her money. She makes her money by going from this extremely lovable person, okay, who's innocent, everything else, to this devious, conniving, maniacal person. And so she calls Rod and says, "Hey, look, have you, this is when Rod actually calls her rather and says, "Look, have you seen Chris?" Well, he was supposed to come home. Well, what? Now, mind you, he's thinking he's getting the up and up on Rose and saying, well, what cab company did he take? Well, I'm not sure. And she, and so when she he's about to record the conversation, she's like, "Well, yeah, I know you want me." And he's like, "No, no, 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 no." And they hang up. And she just looks over to her father, and it's a beautiful shot of her half-lit face, and the other half of her face is dark. And it could really represent and resemble that she's two-faced, really. She's two-faced. On the one side, the one side of her is she's charming and she's pleasant, everything else. And on the other side, she's maniacal and she's just evil and everything else. And so as we go through, okay, the rest of it, Chris is now in the room and trying to figure out how to get out. And he gets hypnotized again. Okay. So this is the scene. So at that point, we come back. Now we're focused on Rose. And this is one of the scariest scenes I've probably seen in cinema in a long time. We see Rose. The first shot you see of her is the milk and the Fruit Loops. Okay? And every single scene, every single movie has that scene where it's like a trademark scene, whatever it is. And this is it. And what it really represents is the separation, okay, of it, race, essentially. Okay? Because you have the white milk and you have the colored Fruit Loops. And this is how films are looked at and everything else. And we see her and she's on her computer and she's, she takes a small little bite of the Fruit Loop, okay, and drinks the milk. And she's listening to I'm Having the Time of My Life by the song from Dirty Dancing, okay? Meanwhile, she's on her computer and she types into the search engine top NCAA athletes, and they're all African American, and she's looking for her next victim. And this is where things start to, go a little nutty. And back there, so you have the white top, the only light in the room. I mean, you have the lamps, but they're not that bright. You have the brightness of the computer, okay? But behind there, you have the grayish wall. And hanging up are all of the victims behind her. You want to talk about scary. And it was just so well done in that respect. And the violence. So once we get to a certain point, okay, Chris figures out a way to basically, Jeremy comes back in because they're going to do the procedure. The guy says, look, thank you I'm going to take your eyes. Okay. And then Jeremy comes back in and Chris finds a way, knocks Jeremy out and escapes. And so that's when Rose, who's in the bedroom doing her thing, that's that shot, listens and hears something. And then that's when the next shot, Jeremy and Chris. And once again, he's about ready to leave. Okay. And he has to fight Jeremy. He gets out of the house, gets in the car, and that's Rose. Okay. And she comes downstairs with a gun and wants to kill Chris. And so, yeah, it's just going back to the Fruit Loop scene, though. And I think that's where, this is really, it was so well filmed. It was scary because all the conquests, as I said, were behind her. And she was just sitting on the bed listening to music. And I'm having the time of my life. And it's just like, you put two and two together, like, oh my God, she's really evil. So yeah, and she takes the hunting rifle, like I said, once Chris is trying to escape and kill her. Now, the other thing too is Georgette, okay, and Walter are what they call grandma and grandpa. And what ends up happening is you know, there was, Georgette actually gets run over. And so she's out of the hypnotism now, but Chris basically is having a flashback to his mother. And what ends up happening is he tries to escape with her and take her to the hospital. And then she tries to choke Chris, slam into a tree. She's obviously dead. Chris escapes. And then you see this black and so, Chris is all bloodied. Okay. Rose is going after Chris, and he gets her down, and that you see the patrol car roll up. And so Walter, okay, comes back and tracks down Chris and, says, look, let me do it. And he shoots Rose. And so that she's just bleeding out. And then, there is an alternate. So what ends up happening is this car rolls up, this black and white rolls up, and we think that Chris is all done, and it's Rod there to save the day. And so just the hilarious ending there. He was so smart to peel apart the chair and use the padding to make the earplugs to block out the hypnotism. Genius. Yeah, it really was. It really was. And he figured it out once he was scratching it the first time and he got hypnotized. He's like, and that's the shot you see of the handles of the chair. Now, so I kind of went through beat by beat, but there is an alternate ending. And the alternate ending, okay, and I've never seen the alternate ending, but it winds up with him getting, thrown in jail. And what you would expect, right? So it's one of those things where, you don't need to, it's an interesting twist, but this film was like, there's so many different times when it's just so genius in how it's done, how it's shot, the level of care they were taking, or, without any music, or without, just, I guess even the get the key scene, which I showed at the beginning of the show, it's like one of those things where all you're doing is repeating the same three words: get the keys, get the keys, get the keys, to raise the tension. He's a fantastic filmmaker. He really, really is. And I can't wait. I mean, so getting back to what I was saying about the directing early, because there is something to be said about how a director starts off, right? He's only made 3 films. Okay. Now, when you go back and you look at directors, okay, they always have a master class. They're perfect films. Okay. If you have a director that really, what's the word I want to? If they come out of the gate really well, and they have to, right, because it's the directorial debut. What ends up happening is the bar is set so high that it's difficult with the next couple of films they make, right? I mean, you take a look at somebody like, and I'm just going to use it as an example, Quentin Tarantino, okay? Reservoir Dogs was a fantastic movie, okay? I just watched basically the whole thing the other night, and it was fantastic. I forgot how good it was, okay? And it wasn't made on that big of a budget and everything else, and it had, And then when Pulp Fiction comes along in 1994, which we'll be doing later on for the Perfect Movies here on the channel, it's incredible. It redefines filmmaking. He wins the best original screenplay award, Academy Award, just like Jordan Peele did. Now he has 2 of them. And so what ends up happening is everything after that is um everything after that you're always marking it. Like, well, it was good, but it wasn't Pulp Fiction. Okay. Another director was Bradley Cooper. He did an amazing job with The Star Is Born. Amazing job. I loved it. Okay. That being said, he just comes out with Maestro this last year, which was very, very good. It was a different film. Okay. Um, Even though it's not getting the love that the Academy's giving it and everything else. But when you come out of the blocks and you make a really impressive film, it's always difficult to live up to that. Okay. Always. And Jordan Peele is the same way. Get Out was perfect. It was perfect on every single level. Every 5 or 6 or 7 years, we have these films that come out that are society changing films. Get Out was the last one. Okay. We just had Barbie this year. Okay. This last, calendar year. We're probably going to have another couple in a few years. But Jordan Peele hit a home run right out of the gate. Everything that he is going to make from here on out, when it gets critiqued, it's always going to be um, it's always going to live up to, well, it was good, but it wasn't Get Out or, whatever it was. I think that he needs to really get another 4 or 5 films under his belt because I think the best is yet to come from him. I do. And that sounds crazy, but it is true. He has the chance, okay, legitimately has the chance to be the next modern day Alfred Hitchcock. That's not hyperbole either. Because if he can make something as society and in your face as a Get Out, and then turn around and do something as good as a Nope, and it was good, okay? You can only imagine what he's producing this new film, you know, um, he has that chance. I think Jordan Peele's Candyman is perfect. Yeah, he did the remake of Candyman. I forgot about that. Candyman was this little film back in the 80s, but he did that so well too. He has a chance to be the next Alfred Hitchcock. It's not hyperbole, but there's something to be said about directors that come out of the gates and make perfect films. Now, was The Star Is Born perfect? No, definitely not. But it was very, very good. And I think that, you know, everything's going to be, I hope. And that's why Bradley wanted to make something so different, it was musically driven in Maestro. So, yeah, I think Get Out is perfect. And that's why I'm doing it for this film. But I also think that we're getting to a point now where we're waiting on bated breath with whatever Jordan Peele comes out with. Because we know it's going to be quality. Okay? We know that. And at the same time, there isn't a lot of horror out there. I mean, Blumhouse, you know, they're about the exception of the rule. Okay? Um, but other than that, there's nothing else out there that's really taking it by storm. So I think he's got a shot to. I could very well see Jordan Peele winning another Oscar in the next 5 to 10 years. No joke. No joke. So yeah, Get Out is perfect. So that is it's just so well done. I was when I first saw it, I was just blown away. I'm like, how did I not see this before? It was so good, and I was so happy to sit down and watch it again. So I love this movie. I love this movie. I own this movie on Blu-ray and DVD. So yeah, it's in my collection. So yeah, that is Get Out. And that is the perfect movie for February, and is kicking off Black History Month. Um, he can write, produce, and direct. Not too many people can do all three in a successful way. Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. I mean, it's so hard to write and direct today. It really is. But once you nail it, right? And that's what he's done. So, as I said, Get Out is the perfect movie um, for February, and it's kicking off Black History Month. I have so much stuff coming up on the channel, guys. Um, I'm gonna sit down. So I want to do a. I know we just lost him 48 hours ago, and I'm talking about Carl Weathers. So for the first, I said I was going to do actors and filmmakers. I'm going to sit down. We're going to do a little Carl Weathers tribute, talk about his career and whatever else. When I saw the news the other day, and I put out a tweet about this. And by the way, guys, if you want to go follow me on Twitter, I'm always on Twitter talking about movies, tweeting about movies, whatever. When I saw that he had passed, I was at work, but I was extremely, extremely sad because I got to meet the man back in 2016. And he was so generous with his time. And I was at a red carpet, and we were the last people. My crew, but we were the last people um, on the carpet. And he stopped and talked with me for a couple minutes, and it was magical. And that was before he signed up to do Mandalorian. So that tells you something. Anyways, when I talk about Weathers and everything else, I'll play the clip on when I do the stream, probably tomorrow. So, but yeah, there's so much stuff coming up on the channel. We're going to do retrospectives, okay, of fantastic Black History films, okay. I'm talking about 42. I'm talking about Invictus. I'm talking about, Black Panther, fantastic movies like that. Do the Right Thing, In the Heat of the Night. Um, and then in between that, we're going to sprinkle in some retrospectives on filmmakers and actors and directors, you know, and that's going to be Black History Month. And then March, we're going to do Marvel March. So I'm going to take probably the 8 or 10 best films from Marvel and do that. So much stuff coming up on the channel. So there's retrospectives, there's interviews, there's perfect movies like we're doing today. And that means that I'm going to need your support. Now, Dadpool is right now my only, and I thank him for this, is my only member. But you can become a member too. And, he's been with me from the beginning. And so this is the membership page. Okay. And so essentially right now it's free. Okay. I've made all my my levels extremely cheap for you guys. I mean, $2.99, $6.99, $9.99. I mean, you can't get all this material for $10 a month. You just can't. Um, and that all being said, my goal is to hashtag subs to 2,000 subs. Okay, race to 2,000. And the other thing too is I'm looking to try and get between 15 and 20 paid subs by the end of 2024. Those are my two major goals. But my biggest goal right now is to get this out to as many people as possible. Okay, so if you're on Twitter, if you're on Instagram and whatever, or you're on YouTube, and you see this and you like movies and you like what you're seeing, tell your friends about it. Okay. The biggest thing you can do is hit that like and subscribe button and turn on your notifications, because you guys that way you never miss a video. And that's the biggest thing. I want you guys to be able to come back here and, watch the live stream or watch the video and really enjoy this stuff. Yeah. And that's my goal. So and I'm always looking to, I've got another little show I'm trying to put together called Anatomy of a Movie. yeah. So that's that. So that is the membership page, and go check. If nothing else, go check it out. See what you think. Um, so that is Get Out, and that is the perfect movie of February. This is just the beginning of what's to come for not only the month but the channel. I have a ton of other stuff, and I have all these movies lined up for um, March and moving forward. So that I'm like, once I get done right here, I'm gonna go right back to work and get prepped and export this, put this out for you guys, and I'm gonna get right back to work for tomorrow's stream. So, but okay, guys, that's gonna do it for today. Um, so do the three things that you need to do: be safe, be careful, and have a great rest of the day. And I will see you guys tomorrow. I will tweet out what time and I'll let you know. So I am David Steele, and this has been Real Talks. Thanks, guys. Bye bye.